the story that's important to them to share, and to feel that they can share it fully and completely, and to trust that it will be truly and deeply heard and understood by a caring, intelligent, non-judgmental person. And from there, the work will begin.
Welcome back to Guiding Tides. Welcome back to Guiding Tides. Today we have Aaron Gilbert. Aaron brings over 20 years of experience in the industry. He is the founder of Boston Evening Therapy Associates. We're very happy to have Aaron with us today. Aaron, if you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. A pleasure to be with you. I started Boston Evening Therapy Associates 20 years ago, and it really came out of a simple concept. I was working at an agency, and I was noticing that all my evening appointments were booked up for many months in advance, and thought, wow, it'd be nice to really specialize or focus on having off hours, evening and weekend appointments available for people, because it was in such high demand. That was sort of the genesis of the idea. And it started with just me, and I always had the idea of building to reach more people and have a number of therapists with different backgrounds and different approaches. And over the years, we've done that, and we pride ourselves in having a very robust and active website that I hope is helpful to people, whether or not they are a client with us. And and we've built a reputation in the Boston area and serve all of Massachusetts now, thanks to the magic of online therapy. So yeah, it's been working well. But we're always trying to adapt to what's needed. Things change, everything changes in life, and so we try to adapt to what's needed and what people are seeking out.
That's great. How many people do you have on your staff? Well, how many therapists do you have?
We have about 30 clinicians. And,
that's really impressive. So I assume you started off on your own.
Yeah.
And took it from there. I
always wanted to build a team, collegiality. Doing therapy is great, but of course, it's by its nature a pretty solitary piece of work that you're doing with one client at a time and on your own. And it's
that's
nice
very
to
isolating.
It can be quite isolating, yeah, and it's very nice to have colleagues to share, to support and to be supported by, and to share ideas and to work with when you're feeling stuck. Hearing different perspectives and different inputs is very useful. So that's been a nice dynamic feature of building the practice.
Do you guys work out of a building and everyone's got their own suite and their monitor where they meet with their clients, or are people, creating an office out of their home space and that's where they meet with their clients? Like, how does it work for you guys?
Yeah, we do have offices in Cleveland Circle and Brighton, Brookline line. Yeah, right there in Cleveland Circle.
Uh-huh.
But no, not every therapist has their own office. We used to do that. We used to have a number of offices, but since the world changed in 2000, we've pared down quite a bit in terms of our footprint from an office space standpoint. And so a lot of people are doing strictly remote therapy, which, as we were talking, I was mentioning to Christian before, has pros and cons, but I think on balance it is a net positive. It's very accessible for the client. It's convenient. It takes a lot less of their time. There's no commuting. And it's easier for them to find a time in their day to make it work. So people are busy, and that's another example of sort of meeting people where they are.
Oh yeah.
They want help, but they're busy, and they don't have time necessarily or the inclination to do it the traditional way of driving to somebody's office and waiting in their waiting room, and it's a nice balance. However, I will say that after 5 years or so, things are switching back a little bit, and a lot more people are requesting in person.
I remember when I first got into the field, I was working for an agency where I would come into their office space and I would meet with my clients there. We'd have a suite, for our sessions. And, I ran the gambit from dealing with depression to anxiety to whatever issues, but also the age ranges. I dealt with children as young as 10,
Mhm.
all the way to working with senior citizens. And reflecting on the population I just connect with. I connect with teenagers. I just like working with high school students, and I've done that, ever since I got out of college in different capacities. But they would cancel. They would be the highest, you know, age group that would cancel on me in the last minute, and I started asking them, like, what's going on? Is it me? Is it the concept of therapy? Like, what's the struggle here? And the commonality that the common answer that they shared with me was that the drive to therapy with their parent was, don't forget to bring this up with Mahesh, and make sure you tell Mahesh about this, about that. So that half an hour ride or 40-minute ride to my office was,
It's a real killjoy.
oh my God, the looks on their faces when they walked in, like, Ma, go in the waiting
Yeah,
room, Ma,
right,
and
right.
then the ride home was, what did Mahesh say? you know,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
and
oh, wow.
they hated that. And and I asked them, like, I check in, obviously we as therapists will check with our clients to see how the therapy is going, any feedback, so when I hit that point, how is it going with you, doing this virtually? 100%, they love it. I've got kids, they use their phone and they'll walk around the neighborhood, so they get out of their house, so their parents aren't on the other side of the door, listening in, so yeah, it's a home run for these kids.
That's uh, that's a great point, because I think the magic of therapy is when it's a space where it needs to be completely and truly your own, and it's not, you're not doing errands for your parents or for anybody, and you're not following anybody else's agenda but your own. And that's what it, I think, really needs to be. It's hard for parents, I guess. You put yourself in their shoes, and especially if they don't have sort of that insight about what therapy is or what it should be or how it works the best. They're only trying to help. They're only trying to. They have good intentions, but I can definitely see how that would be a barrier to making it work. I kind of we don't see a whole lot of teenagers, but we see a lot of very young adults. Where this is their first therapy experience, and of course, it's usually online. And I was sort of laughing to myself that I could imagine sort of saying to one of them that, if you'd like, next week we could meet in the office, and that their response might be, "Wow,
Why?
that's weird. Wow,
Right.
why would I want to do that? That's weird." So it's just, I guess it's just what your perspective is. But that's a really interesting point. I think that would be, yeah, especially for a teenager, that could be a real bummer to have to be interrogated on the way there and on the way back.
Oh yeah, no, it's brutal.
What did we talk about? We talked about you, Ma.
Yeah, we talked we talked about this, ma.
So
Yeah,
it sounds to me that, you know, I really respect and appreciate what you've built over the last 20 years, Aaron. You know, you've clearly found a gap and you filled that gap. And it seems as though to me that it just so worked out that when COVID struck,
right.
Aaron had an answer to that, which is amazing. I'm curious. So, at your practice, what methods of psychology or counseling? What's your approach?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and again, that's one of the reasons that we have so many different therapists, so many different backgrounds. You know, in therapy, there's a many different approaches you can take, and there's all different kinds of therapeutic stances and theories. And so we have different people who specialize in different areas and um, approach therapy from a different philosophy. But I can generalize it. I mean, I think I can break it down to some of the most important parts. And I think that we were just talking about that a minute ago, which is it's got to be your place. It's got to be authentically um, your, you're in charge. I think that from my perspective, and I think this is probably consistent across all of the different approaches that we employ. Um, the magic of therapy is really, it's one of those things that's very simple, but it's hard to actually make happen. The concept is simple, but the actualization of it is less straightforward. And that is that a person wants to be in a place where they can tell their full story, um, the story that's important to them to share, and to feel that they can share it fully and completely, and to trust that it will be truly and deeply heard and understood by a caring, intelligent, non judgmental person. And and from there the work will begin. And like I said, it sounds, well, that's pretty simple, that's pretty basic. I mean, yeah, what's the big deal with that? But it is a big deal because when you think about it, I mean, if you really think about it, how often in normal life do we ever get that opportunity? Of course, we tell some stuff to our friends, maybe we tell some stuff to our girlfriend or our wife, or, of course, we share things. We have a best friend and we tell him his is what's really bumming me out. And we tell him, but you're always needing to parse it. You're always needing to be cognizant of the relationship or the social dynamic. I'm going to have to give him time to tell his story. I can't just dominate the conversation. It can't be all about me.
Hey, you don't want to be that
And
guy.
you don't want to be that guy, and the other thing is, most of the time in most of life, when we interact with people, even if they're very close people and they really care about us, very often they're hearing it. They're hearing it not from an open stance that's all about you. It's filtered through the stance of, how do I relate to this? What does this remind me of in my own life? Let me tell you about. Well, that reminds me of something that happened to me. Let me tell you about that. So and I think that's what we try to be aware of in therapy. That no, we're going to be. This is a special relationship. It's a unique kind of a relationship, um, and it's sort of a sacred. It's a sacred relationship, So we have to give it that level of respect and
Yeah.
serious mindedness. Yeah. When people feel that, it's hard to explain, I think, but like there is a hugely therapeutic uh, experience with just that. Of course, there's more to it, and we go, how about working on the issues and things like that. There's a lot of back and forth,
Right.
but there's also a hugely therapeutic experience of having the person feel like, wow, I just told I told my whole story, and this person seems to get it. You know, you haven't necessarily really quote unquote done anything yet, but you've already started a therapeutic relationship.
Being the end user, Aaron, you know, so the reason I asked about the different approaches is because for myself, I had tried quite a few things over the years, and talk therapy just wasn't really it for me. I did some CBT. What finally stuck with me was EMDR. The therapist that I landed with, I want to sit here and say he changed my life. I did the work, but he gave me the tools and showed me how to use them. But I remember that profound effect of the first time where I was like, what you just said, you know, somebody's listening. I just shared things that maybe I haven't even shared with my wife, things from my childhood that I was embarrassed about, whatever.
Right.
So that moment, the work hadn't really begun, and I almost felt, I'm like, wow, I'm healed. I'm doing better. And then the work started. So that was my reasoning for that, to kind of put that out there to the viewers that, you know,
Yeah.
if you've tried and failed before, there's more to go, more to do. Right. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing that point up right there, because again, I'm not an LISCW or LMHC. Like
There's a lot of letters.
I'm just the guy. I went through it, you know, and that's why I really appreciate this conversation here with, you know, everybody from different perspectives. Because it's really hard to find the place, to trust what they're doing, and then to really kind of immerse yourself into that vulnerability. But when you find the right person and they take the right approach, it's worth it.
What resonates with me from what Aaron was saying, what you were touching upon, you got to have a foundation of trust, you know, and that's what brings the person back to the second session, third session, fifth session, right, and so forth. And there is the art of listening and the art of summarizing what you're hearing.
Look, and Aaron, I'm very curious what your response is going to be to this. So I had jumped into like a virtual session, one of the app based. I definitely will not say the name.
Yeah.
And the guy within 5 minutes thought he had me figured out. You know, he kind of asked me about my life, and I told him, I said, look, I said, where I'm at, I think I was 28 at the time, just purchased my first home with my wife. I had my wife, I had the daughters that we talked about since we were 15. I had my dream truck, dream house, dream job, had it all. And I'm like, and I'm still not happy. I said, my mentality is the wolf at the top of the mountain will never be as hungry as the wolf climbing the mountain. Therefore, I need to always find the next mountain to climb. I said that, and his response on my phone, he said, you're so full of shit. And I'm like, excuse me? He goes, you're the type of person. He goes, I need to call you on your bullshit. Yes, he was right. I do like being held accountable.
Yeah.
Call me on it. If you think I'm lying, call me on it. But I'm like, where are you getting that from? He goes, the tattoos, the stuff. And then he stopped. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're not billing my insurance. We're not getting past the 20 minutes here, pal. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, you know, and then he went into this story trying to find commonality with me. He's like, I have tattoos. And he told me he had a tattoo on his private part. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm done. I signed off, deleted the app. My wife was like, how was therapy? Because it was new to me. You know, I was the blue collar union guy. Like, I'm not doing therapy. It's stupid. And I just told her, I'm like, I was fine. It was good. How am I going to tell her that? Like, what are we doing here?
So I take it there was a bad connection.
It was right. But I didn't write therapy off completely. It took me about a year to come back to it. But yes, foundation needs to be built immediately, 100%.
Wow. All credit to you, Christian, for not writing it off completely at that point, given that you already, you know, didn't have the most positive view of it, and then having that experience. That's how did you manage to not write it off completely at that point? I'm interested.
Yeah. So
Good question, Aaron.
yeah, put me put me on the hot seat here. I like it. So honestly, I just kind of went back to doing what I was doing. I laughed it off. I made a joke out of it, and then how I didn't write it off was because my through point of even starting therapy was I wanted to become the best possible version of myself and my wife and my two daughters.
Yeah.
And I could not forget that. And at that point in my life, I was not. Um, Getting into fights and drinking and just some might call it being a 20-year-old, but for me, it was self sabotage to the fullest. And I wasn't destroying things around me, so to say, but I could feel it internally. I'm very in tune with myself. And, I would have off days and then at nighttime put my daughters to bed and I would just look at them and I would know I didn't give them 100%. And I didn't because I didn't have enough capacity because of the time I was dealing with a recent suicide in my family, still grieving the loss of my mom at a young age, all this stuff that was transpiring. So for me, I understood that one bad interaction, I should not put a blanket over the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it took a little bit, but yes, I went back. It took probably 3 more attempts before I finally landed with somebody. So consistency, persistence.
I would have, if I was your therapist, I would have jumped all over the strengths that I'm seeing. Because you've identified your motivators.
Right.
You've identified the fact that you have to dig in deep to push through. And my question in the first session would be, where did you find that? And how are you able to do that on a regular basis and come back to therapy? Yes, you've identified your wife and your children as the main
whys.
source,
Yeah.
Of why you're doing this and why to live and why to move forward, right? But the awareness of it is a huge strength. And I would just capitalize on that. That resiliency is a huge factor.
Well, look, I mean, the approach that this person took, and I'm not trying to advertise them or that or any of it, and to swing that back to Aaron here. So maybe that approach would have worked for somebody. Maybe, since he had received his license, that's been his little niche. And that's the people that, whatever. And maybe he did think he had me figured out. And when I popped back and I'm like, we're done here, he was kind of probably like, that sucks. So the importance of having, I guess, a better skill set of identifying who your client is. Or Aaron, you said you have 30 people working for you at this point. You probably have some sort of system in place where whether it be LGBTQ or somebody who has anxiety or, different types of people, you kind of know where you're placing them based off of them and the client's needs and the professionals working for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you do that, Aaron? Like when you're recruiting staff or when you're having your staff meetings and deciding who's going to be matched with which client, what's your process of identifying the right therapist for that client after that intake?
Yeah, I mean, I think Christian was sort of touching on it. Well, first of all, we allow the client to sort of do some of their own pre-screening. Sometimes they will look through the different bios on the website and they will resonate with a particular therapist and they will request that therapist or they will request a specific approach like EMDR, for example. Or they will request specifically a male or a female therapist. So they begin to sort of self refer themselves at the outset. But then it's a question of sort of exactly that, is to match them up with a person with the approach, with the temperament, with the experience that we think is going to work the best. And then it's ultimately up to the client to determine if that is the case. Usually it does work out. Not always. Sometimes people will request somebody else, but usually it does. I would say that sort of picking up on what both of you guys were saying, um, that I would tap into the same thing as the strengths of what Christian was bringing to it. You were saying that he was doing this for his wife and his children and such, and that's important. But I think there's also even more important, if I can be so bold, is
Mhm.
that he recognized something within himself, something that I'm worth it
Right.
personally. I'm worth it, and that is powerful. And um, to some extent, that wants to be a prerequisite to the therapy. It doesn't have to be there strongly, but I do think it's important to enhance that. In If it's just enough to get the person to come for the first time, you want to build on that, because ultimately it is for you. And we remain an individual. Of course we take on roles. Of course we take on important roles. What's more important than a husband and father? But there is always a part of us that is us, me. And
Right.
that we don't want to lose that. The other thing I would say is that what I didn't there's a few things I didn't like about what that therapist did, but one of them was, I think that the most important quality, there's many, but the most important one, I think, is a genuine, open curiosity. So I would never hope, I would hope that I would never, I'm not, I would hope that I would not presume like, oh, I got you all figured out.
Yeah.
How, I mean, because if I've got you all figured out, I don't have to be curious about anything anymore. I mean, I don't have to, I already know it, and that's, and it's not about me figuring you out. So what if I've got you all figured out? How's that going to help you? So, yeah, I think curiosity is critical to maintain.
That's where, so with the EMDR therapist that I worked with, it's funny. So I had heard a lot about him,
Uh-huh.
and it was like, he's a wizard. He's going to heal you. And strangely, I really didn't put it off. I looked into what EMDR was a little bit, and I seen the different tools they can use. And I was like, all right, like, is this going to be effective?
Could you quickly explain to the viewers what EMDR
Nope.
is?
Absolutely not. I will fuck this up, and I will.
Come on,
That's why you
let's
want
do
me
it.
to do it.
No cutting.
Well, look,
Explain
for
your experience of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so my perspective, what we did once we kind of collected all the data of it, all the past traumas, all the visuals, what kind of played into my PTSD, my panic, anxiety.
Yeah.
He created, kind of like a list. I don't know what he did behind the board, the pen. I didn't ask, but we also created this safe space. So he was like, in your mind, what's your safe space? For me, it was a vacation me and my wife had gone to. Beautiful, just like really remembered everything about it.
Uh-huh.
And I also put my wife and my children, they were up in the hotel room. Granted, the kids weren't with us when my wife and I had gone. It was my safest place with my safest people. It was just that. So we would do bilateral stimulation. So I would have like buzzers in my hand that would play different pitches, different tones of vibration. I would close my eyes, I'd look up, and he would ask questions. He would give me prompts, and I would go through this. And I have a very imaginative mind. When I think of something, when I try to recollect the memory, I can see it. If I tell my wife it's in the kitchen to the left, and I really go there, as many people do. So when we're going back to the childhood traumas, my mom, and we're very raw on this podcast, so I apologize, Aaron. I would go back to the time when my mom cut her throat, cut her wrist right in front of me. Like, so when we're going through that,
Yeah.
I was really there and I seen every detail down to the color of the tile when I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
And he, what I assume being the professional, he would kind of monitor how I was breathing, or, you know, he would watch me closely.
Through the paddles.
No,
So how is he measuring?
watching me.
Watching you?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
watching me. He would ask me questions. I would respond.
Right.
So I assume if I'm breathing more rapidly, if I'm speaking more quickly, things like that, he knows what's going on. I don't know what the training looks like for this. And again, that's why I wanted to be careful what I say here. You know, he would pause me. He would bring me back. And then we would kind of go a little bit deeper and deeper. So how I looked at it, it was like all this stuff we were working towards. We weren't getting rid of it. We were making me stronger to carry my stuff, right? So it was like a shoreline, and we were just kind of gradually pulling it back. And I got more and more comfortable discussing it. I mean, look, if I hadn't done that work, I wouldn't be here in this podcast and having just breezed past what I just breezed past, you know. That was a very significant event in my young years. But at the end of it, we would always conclude. He'd bring me back to that safe space. I would, you know, put all my thoughts in a imaginary box that we created, and only he held the key to it.
Gotcha.
He'd lock it up. I would leave. He would say, you know, keep an eye on your dreams. You know, hydrate, take care of yourself, give yourself some grace, come back to it next week. And I would have the craziest dreams. I would have the wildest thoughts. I mean, the work wasn't necessarily, in my mind, done with what we were doing right there with the bilateral stimulation, with the lights, anything like that. It was once I left, once my body relaxed out of it, and once I really started to process the whole thing. So we did that for, I don't know, probably 2 months. And then I'd be like, all right, I'm good. I'm done. And this was all private pay. You know, I'm like, all right, I'm all set. I'm going to run back off into the real world.
Yeah.
And then something would stop me in my tracks. And I'm like, nope, I'm not done. I got to go back. And I'd go right back. But yeah, so the bilateral stimulation, getting a full collective of the traumas and thoughts, experiences, putting it into a safe, compartmentalizing it safely, pulling what we need, going into it. He would ask me questions, you know, we would kind of go at some traumatic event. And I would say something, whatever came to mind, whatever I saw. And he would say, go with that. Continue. It was never him telling me what I was thinking, what I was feeling, or processing what I was saying, which was borderline frustrating to me because sometimes my mind would just go blank in these sessions. And for me, part of having OCD, I crave answers. I need
want
certainty,
the answer, right?
100%.
Right.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, do I make something up? I'm like, what do I do here? And he would be like, you know, we're done. Take a breath, take a break, take a breath, come back to it, whatever. But I wanted him in the moment to kind of tell me, you know, what are you experiencing? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? And it was just me on the hot seat the whole time. So he was there loosely guiding me. He was not telling me how to go, where to go, when to go. It was interesting. I want to leave that with this. One of the biggest struggles for me, and I can speak about it very calmly now, was when my mom passed. Look, there was a few different things. There was maybe she committed suicide. Maybe it was an overdose. It was a heart thing. It was a tooth infection. It was all these things. And I always had those thoughts in my head, especially when I became a father. It was like, holy shit. You know, they ask questions at the doctor's office for my kids. Is there a family history of this, and this? And I'm like, question mark. I don't know. But for me, what really messed me up in the whole thing was how she looked in the casket. It was bad. You know, maybe it was some drugs in her system, whatever. She just didn't look good. So I would think about that. I would wake up in the middle of the night. I'd wake up crying because it was just so horrible how she looked.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
No, and thank you. But so here's the thing. The work that I did with him was so powerful. When I think of that, if I even think of it now, I don't see that. We recreated and restructured how she looked in that casket. You know, he asked me in that, he was like, how would you have liked to have seen her?
Yeah.
And I explained it. So where something I used to think of every single day from 16 to I think I was 28, 29 when I did this work, that's what I saw. And it was horrible. Now, maybe once every so often, or if it comes up in conversation, but I had to dig deep to remember how bad she actually looked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we restructured a lot of things. So that was my experience with EMDR. And for the types of traumas and the things that I seen and my mindset, it worked. If I just went in to talk therapy with somebody and was like, yeah, my mom looked bad, I don't think it would have resonated with me. But something about that stimulation and stuff,
That technique works.
yeah, it helped. I find myself still kind of, if I get anxious, it's not obvious, but I almost do the tapping that we did in the EMDR sessions, just kind of naturally, and it just soothes and calms.
Yeah. Yeah, the repetition. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it brings up something that you brought to the therapy, which is actually good, maybe useful advice for anybody that's considering that. I mean, you really brought a tenacity to it. You know, there's a sense of like you brought an attitude of like, this is important. I don't know if this is going to help, but I know that I've got something important that I need to do, and I know this is one option that might be helpful, and I am going to pursue it. Not only am I going to pursue it, I'm going to give it every chance to succeed, which is why you didn't when you thought after a couple of months, like, okay, we're all good here. You re-asked yourself, do I really mean that, or am I just trying to short circuit this and like, I'd rather spend the money on something else, or let me just get back. How long can I lean on this thing? You were worth it, and you had this sense of tenacity. And I would encourage people who are considering therapy it is useful to go into it with the mindset that this is important work, and sometimes it will be very cathartic to kind of, you'll feel really good, feel good about the session and feel positive, but it can also be hard work, like anything in life. Things of value take hard work, and sometimes therapy can be hard work too. That doesn't mean it's going wrong. It just means that it's hard work, and you have to put in the time, which you did. That's great, and that's a really great, helpful perspective on EMDR. What we do have some EMDR therapists in our practice too. One thing that's great about these days, and what we try to do on our website, for example, and I would also encourage people to do this, is if there's a form of therapy that sounds interesting to you, or you've heard it's been useful, read about it, learn about it. There's all kinds of ways to understand what it is. It doesn't have to be some secret that like, only the therapist knows what's going on here. I have to put myself in their hands. We live in an age now where everybody has the opportunity to know about these things. Another approach, EMDR is fantastic for trauma. Another approach that people might be interested in learning about is DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a different approach, but also really impressive and can be extremely effective. And yeah, I mean, if people are interested, just read about it. You can find information on our website and a million places as well.
Make sure that we get your website hooked into the show notes so that way people can tap in. Because look, I mean, again, being the end user here, I don't know how many professionals are watching this. I'm sure there's a couple of you have reached out, but gentlemen like Mahesh and Aaron exist. They're out there. Their practices are for you, right? It's not, you're not walking in and talking and complaining and they're justifying you. There's actual proven methods here. So
Yeah.
I encourage everybody to, you know, go on Aaron's website, see what fits, learn about it, as he just said, tap in with Mahesh. And like I said, this probably resonates with the audience a little bit more. Therapy sucks. It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's a workout. You know what I mean? But you got to do it. You will get out what you put into it. If you knew me 5 years ago, completely different person. Mahesh, he's actually known me for a better part of my whole life. You know, so the fact that I'm sitting here saying go to therapy, yeah. All I gotta say into that is find the therapy that works for you. That's my biggest point with this. So I'm so happy that, you know, Aaron has these opportunities as you do to come on and share the different types of therapy. DBT, I haven't heard much about that. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's an approach that a woman by the name of Marsha Linehan created a number of years ago, and it's very technique oriented, similar to EMDR, sort of techniques of self-soothing, calming yourself down, noticing negative thoughts, um, developing mindfulness skills. Um, it tends to be very useful with trauma history.
Yeah.
It's a whole protocol. Often it's in a group therapy setting, and it follows a specific curriculum. In addition to individual therapy, um, and yeah, I would encourage people to start maybe with some of her writing straight from the creator's words. Marsha Linehan has some really great books on it, and be a great way to get started to learn more about it. Um, but like I think, like Ramesh was saying too, another throughput, another consistency is that it all starts with building trust. You know, you can have the best technique in the world, but if you haven't created a positive rapport and trust with the person you're working with, you're not going to get very far. So um, that development of that is a critical first step. I mean, how does that happen? You know, it's I think it comes across in many different ways and things that you say, but you know, also in body language, and just sort of a you know, as human beings, we're very intuitive. You know, we have a strong gut feeling. We're very aware. Um, we have strong instincts. We have a sense of knowing when somebody's sincere and when they're not, and when they're open to us or not, or when they're paying attention to us or not. And so, just I think being fully present with that person and genuinely curious, I think, is probably the quickest way to start. What do you think, Mahesh? Like, how do you build trust with a client?
It's thank you for asking that. Like I'm reflecting on my clients as you're talking. I'm reflecting on my journey of got me here, and I think I've always connected um, with the teenage population for a reason. I like to, you know, obviously, I mean, not obviously, but like I like to help young people who have the capacity to say, yes, my life sucks right now, or I'm in a bad place right now, but I want more. And, you know, when you see that in a 14-year-old or 15-year-old, I just want to help that kid. And I don't want to start quoting Erickson and Freud and Piaget and, you know, all these guys, because they're not going to care who they are. And I honestly don't care who they were. They had some good ideas, and that's great, you know, but I think at the end of the day, the person in front of me needs to feel comfortable having a conversation with me, and they have to get to that point because I'm being genuine with them, and not that I'm this Google app where they could just look up what's my answer to this, what's my answer to my dad not loving me. You can't Google that, right? But we could talk about it, and we could talk about how that makes you feel. We could talk about how you can cope, and it's never, so when Christian was talking about, this form of therapy, that form of therapy, my approach has always been a blend, like I like solution focused and I like CBT. So when I approach my clients, I like to look at templates, and I like to tailor make a template for them to follow. I feel, and I think therapists have their own vision of what they define therapy as. Yes, we have to follow guidelines and structure to be a therapist. Yeah, I get that. But you hit a point where you start developing your skills on how you communicate with somebody, right? And there is the art of listening. You have to shut up and not figure somebody out in 5 minutes.
Right.
Right. And you got to hear their story without interrupting them. And there are awkward silences, and there's a lot of stuttering, and there's a lot of, I didn't mean that. And I have to shut up and just wait.
Right.
Right. So you get used to that. The more you do it, the more you get used to it. It's like parenting. You'll get used to falling into a pattern of communication with your kids, or good parents do, because you want to find out what they're thinking, and having them say something out loud matters. So
I was just doing that with Callie.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're having that person in front of you verbalize, I hurt because of this. And I've never said that to anybody. Well, now you did. Now it's out there. Now we've identified a trigger, or we've identified a root cause for your depression, or whatever the issue is, right? Now we got something to talk about, right? And instead of me talking about it, it's like, oh, I think you're an alcoholic because of this. Like, you tell me.
Right.
What do you think about what you just said? And how is that affecting you? And then we expand on it, and just, you let it expand. Because now it's like a living organism that you're watching grow. And you've got to maintain it, and you've got to maintain that curiosity that Aaron was talking about. Like, tell me more about your story. And there is a skill to that. But I think that therapists that are in the game and they're genuine, have a genuine interest, with their client. And do I connect with all clients? No. So I put it out there in my profile, like, this is, the kind of person that connects with me. If you're that person, schedule an appointment and let's talk, but I'm not someone that works with the LGBT population. I will, and I'll learn, but I'm not going to claim to be an expert. That would be a lie.
Right.
Right. I'm not being genuine.
Yeah.
Right. But if you want to talk about substance abuse or domestic violence, or being bullied, or being the bully, yeah, that's right up my alley. I could connect to those things, from the work I've done
Sure.
previously and whatnot. Anger issues, sure. The angry teenage boy, that's my favorite. That's my go-to, as you can see.
Yeah.
But I think that if you're able to take elements out of different theories and different styles, there's the narrative where you want to have the person talk about themselves, and you barely talk in the session. You're letting them expand, and you're teaching them and motivating them on how to do it. Then there's motivational therapy. Then there's solution focus. Like, your life sucks right now. How does it suck less? That's from A to B. Life sucks less at level B. How do I get there? What do I need to? Where do I see myself 5 years from now? It's a big question I ask, or ask the now what? That's solution focused.
You talking there for a second just made me think of something. So where I truly had success in therapy was as mentioned with OCD, I want to have control. What I learned being with the proper therapist in the right method or area of mental health, I guess,
Mm.
whatever his approach was, for me to gain control, I had to let go of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Paradoxical,
it
borderline,
is.
but right, you have to let go of the control. You have to trust the process.
Right. So being vulnerable is a strength, right?
Yeah.
But some people might say that if I'm vulnerable, I'm
You're
weak,
weak.
right?
Yep.
So is it a strength to back down from a fight? Or,
It depends.
well, yeah, it does depend, right? Yeah, but if all right, so typical teenage pushy fight, you know, somebody bumps into the cafeteria. I'm going to throw my
Bigger man
tray
walks
down
away.
now and I'm going to get in a fight.
Right.
Like, really? Really? Okay. So, let's talk about that. Well, I can't be seen as as a P word. I can't be seen as weak,
Mm-hmm.
right? All my boys are watching me. I have to.
Right.
I don't know. Where's the strength in walking away? I don't know. So those are the questions I would ask, like my typical angry teenage male, and we would explore that, so there it is. There's the conversation.
Hmm.
I don't claim to have any answers, so the person,
You're authentic. You're an authentic therapist, and that's to answer that question right there. Like you're not, as you said, you don't cater to certain communities, not because you're against it or anything. It's
No.
just it's not you.
don't have experience.
I feel like a lot of, and I'm not trying to put a blanket on the industry, but I feel like there's a lot of therapists out there that they're just gonna kind of make themselves fit into whatever box their client is. A few times I've seen people in my younger years, and I was like, all right, this person's not experienced. I'm just a textbook to them. They learned about me in college, and I'm like, I'm out. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm fascinating because of my story. They're going to go tell their friends, oh, you'll never believe this kid, right? It takes a lot to, again, build that foundation, secure that trust, to be vulnerable, to let go.
Yeah, bro. There are therapists out there that are an absolute nightmare. It's like just because you have a license doesn't mean you're any good. It's
Mhm.
like contractors. How many contractors have you hired that have come into your house to do an addition or do the bathroom or whatever? And I'm like, can you do this? Can you do that? Oh yeah, yeah, no problem.
Mhm.
And then in the job, in all my years, I never ran into a problem like this in pipe. In all my years, wow. I'm like, really? Me?
Yeah,
I'm that guy.
Why here? Why was it?
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm that guy that
We-
presented this this unique problem in plumbing.
They also, one thing I'll always hear from them is like, boy, the last guy you had doing this, he really didn't know
Oh
what the
yeah,
hell
yeah. Oh boy, I can't believe he did this. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah,
Where'd
but
you-
I
where'd you
got you,
find the
buddy.
last guy that did this?
That's when
And
you
then the
tell
guy
them I
after
was the
him
guy who
would
did
say
it.
the same thing.
Always. Yeah, but and Aaron, like if you've been in the field for over 20 years, I'm sure you've come across a couple of people you've had to let go or minimally you had to have a
Yeah.
conversation with, like, hey,
Yeah,
less of this,
Yeah.
more of that,
Right.
this
Yeah.
isn't working. Stop talking so
Yeah.
much.
Mhm.
yeah, for sure. I mean, yep, therapists are just people, and some are good and some are not. And some are good for certain people and not good for other people. So it is it does take flexibility, and it does take an open mind. I think like Christian was fortunate enough to bring to it. It's like open mind, and if something doesn't work out with somebody, that doesn't necessarily mean that the whole thing is useless. It just means that relationship didn't work. Yeah, I think that's important for sure.
Hey, how do you work with your staff around their stress level? How do you help
Mm.
them, or do you guys talk about this in staff meeting? Do you guys have a thing where,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's
self
where,
care?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where collegiality is really important, and where having an environment that is not isolated, like we were talking about at the beginning. Yeah, therapists can get um, get stuck, get isolated, get frustrated, wonder if they're doing anything, if they're having an impact.
Yep.
Um, um, we don't always. I think we don't always see, the net positive thing. I think, like Christian was saying, is like a lot of the if you're doing good therapy, a lot, and probably even the majority of the gains are happening outside of the relationship. Once the person's incorporating it into their regular life, and you don't get to see that, and they don't necessarily think of, report it back to you. It's not their responsibility to report it back to you. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
so, we sometimes don't know uh, the impact that we're having, even if things are going really well. So yeah, sure, that can be dispiriting. And so we do try to address those things in team meetings or individual meetings, or, just through email, or however we can connect with people. Be open to that.
No, that's good to hear. I don't think there's enough there's enough attention given to supervision. You know,
Hmm.
given in supervision to that issue.
Hmm.
Self care. Self care matters. Um, I mean, if you're showing up to the session as a therapist and you know you're not on your game to be receptive, to process and analyze and break down what the person in front of you is presenting, because you're dealing with your own crap. Yeah, that's not going to be a good session.
Nope.
No,
Yeah, that's not going to help. You know.
no, yeah, agreed.
So you've got the place in Brookline, but you live in Colorado. How do you do that? I mean, obviously through telehealth. Yeah, I get that, but seriously, like that
It's
cannot be
only been
easy.
it's well, at this point it's easier. I mean, I've only been out here for a couple of years, so for 18 of the years I was in Boston. I do have a clinical director who is excellent, and she handles a lot of the responsibilities, the direct relationship with the therapist. She's more involved,
Mm.
um, and yeah, and the rest of it. And I do. My family is still back in Boston, and I still get back there a lot. And whenever I'm in town, I reconnect with everybody. So definitely still a strong Boston uh, connection. I try to get into the
Broncos
Red
or
Sox
Patriots?
game. that doesn't that doesn't change.
You put him on the spot there.
Patriots.
There it is.
Yeah, good
I
answer.
Yeah, I'm a lifelong Celtics fan too. Just I grew up in the Larry Bird era, and that was very very powerful experience in my life. It was it's interesting how, as a I don't know if you guys are big sports fans, but it's it's interesting how, as a young person, or as a adolescent or a very young adult, how how powerful that experience can be. I miss those days of, like, I'm still a fan, but it it doesn't affect me the same way it did when I was a kid, and that's it's interesting when you tap into those. Mahesh, that's you have the opportunity to work with young kids who are experiencing the world in a really raw, powerful way that is, sometimes really powerful for the positive, and sometimes really powerful for the negative. But it's a different way that young kids internalize the world, and when we get to be you know, regular old adults.
It's funny you just said that, and I didn't mean to pull us too far off topic there, but actually to tie it back in. So I was of the blessed generation. I was born in '94, so I grew up with Patriots, Celtics, Sox. I mean,
Yeah,
that's when we won everything in those
Yeah.
years, right? So
right.
I was so used to the Pats winning the Super Bowl, Sox winning the series. If they didn't that year,
Oh.
I felt off.
There was trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, I can't say I tied a lot of my mental health to sports, but yeah, no, that's that was impactful for sure. Happy I brought it up, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story of how I got to know how much Bostonians love sports.
He's from New York originally.
I'm from New York, and I couldn't give a crap about sports, but I'll pretend to just to irritate people. I have a Yankees hat just to piss people off. But okay, so 1986, right? The Mets play the
I don't
Sox. What are you talking about? This is like
I was
red
born in
tea as a
'94.
child.
What do you mean?
No. Okay, Aaron.
I remember it well. I remember
Right?
it very, very well.
World Series,
Mm.
last game, the Mets. Okay, people are gonna be angry, so I don't care. Be angry. I don't know the guy's name. He hits the ball. The ball goes in between the legs of the Red Sox guy, right? And that caused the Mets to get the runs in to win the World Series. New York explodes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at BU, right? And everyone's watching. I'm at Boston University as a sophomore or as a freshman. I forget, 86. I don't know. So everyone rushes out into Kenmore Square, screaming, hollering, right? New Yorkers, which is really the majority of BU, comes out, right? All these young college kids. And out of Fenway comes a flood of very, very angry Bostonians, right? That see these New York kids cheering. And I'm just with my other idiot friends jumping up and down. I'm like, we're having a party. I don't care. I got this guy who wraps his huge hand around my throat, lifts me up. And I'm not kidding. Then I was thin. I was a little guy.
Yeah.
And I'm looking down at my toes dangling. And I'm looking at this guy. I go, dude, it's just a game. And I'm hoping to God that this resonates with him. He
Probably
goes,
the worst thing to say.
yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, he said, you know what? You're right. And he let me go. And I ran back in my dorm as quick as I could. I'm like, what is up with these people? But it's religion here.
Oh yeah.
Sports here is religion. Yeah. Hard way to find out.
So before we wrap up here, look, as I've been saying to everybody, this is your episode. Is there anything that you want to say to our audience in regards to mental health, Boston Evening Therapy Associates, or just a view?
Yeah. I think that maybe the last thing I would want to say is just to step away from the therapy side of things and acknowledge that there are many ways to mental and emotional health. It does not, I don't mean to imply that it has to be through therapy. It doesn't. And therapy is a tool, and sometimes it can be very helpful, and sometimes not, and sometimes it can be part of other things that are helpful. I would say, for example, like that normal things in life, make sure you get sunlight, natural sunlight, make sure you take care of yourself, make sure you try to get good sleep if you can, drink a lot of water, take care of yourself physically. I think one other thing I did want to mention, we were kind of talking around some of this before, but remind yourself that there is a tremendous amount of noise out there in the world. I think that one of the things that you guys were talking about some was how we relate to other people and what they expect of us, and am I going to look tough enough in front of my friends, like in that cafeteria fight and things like that. we there's so much noise. We do a lot of comparing ourselves to other people. Do we measure up? Are we good enough? How's everybody thinking about us? What do I think about me?
Yep.
And most of that is really noise. It's finding a way to trust yourself, um, recognizing your own worth in things. Um, Even if we've had I think that Mahesh, you were talking about a kid that might say, my dad doesn't love me. Of course, that's heavy. That's really heavy. Um, but I think that the biggest problem with that is that the kid is probably also saying, if my dad didn't love me, then how 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 can I possibly love myself? And uh, do I deserve to love myself? And we have to fight through that. That each person, that's on your dad. That's what your dad chose to do. Um, um, who knows why he did that? He had his reasons. They probably had to do with his own uh, sense of self worth. But we don't make our decisions based on what other people uh, how other people judge us. Even a person as powerful as our own parent. So yeah, I guess I would just encourage people to seek their own inner strength and try to remind yourself, that a high percentage, 80, 90, maybe 90% of all of the kind of stuff you hear out there online from just or what some friend of a friend said about something, or it's often just noise and not worth investing too much into. Invest in yourself. Invest in yourself.
Yeah, it's you know people that are listening to this. I just want to emphasize what you're saying. You deliver it like, yeah, of course, like filter out the bad stuff, focus on yourself, and um, like Christian said, therapy's hard. It is hard because you're challenging yourself and you're confronting yourself and you're evolving. And there are growing pains with that as well. That emotional growth that you go through uh, can be very, very scary. But I think that if people dig in deep enough, they can find the strength to come to the next session and take it session by session instead of looking at the ultimate goal of like, well, when am I going to be happy?
Hmm.
When is this depression going to go away? Well, that's not going to work. That attitude is not going to work. But just show up to the next session, and see where it goes. You know, um, and smart goals, just being very realistic. In addition to what Aaron was saying about taking care of yourself physically and getting out there, don't isolate, don't be agoraphobic. Don't hide in your bedroom all day. Get
No
yourself
battles
out
won in
there.
bed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Know when to go to bed. Know how to eat right. Take care of yourself. But I think also appreciating who you are and where you are, and saying that out loud matters. And I think also being um, just gratitude for what you do have, acknowledging what you do have, and acknowledging the people in your life that are there now. Um, I think that matters as well.
What you just said, and I don't want to extend that too much, but yeah, just recently I was dealing with a situation with my father. He was going on to me and my two older brothers about how bad his childhood was. Um, Look at me, he's 70, 71 years old, and he was putting a lot of heavy stuff on us. Now, I can go tit for tat with a lot of people on a messed up childhood, but I don't necessarily wear that on my sleeve. Now, in that moment, I started going back to my childhood. I started thinking about all the stuff he's saying. I started kind of going downhill. I paused, like you were just talking about. I stood in my kitchen. I looked out the window. I see my two beautiful, healthy, daughters playing on their $3,000 swing set with our full-time in-home nanny. Like, I'm not saying that for monetarily bragging rights, nothing like that, but you know what I came from.
Yep.
So to pause in that moment, I didn't feel good. I still, I deal with the dizziness, the vertigo, the depression, the stuff, right? And now I got people throwing more onto my plate. But in that moment, I didn't use, to Aaron's point, to your point, I wasn't like, okay, is CBT going to help me? Is EMDR going to help me? I didn't pull any of those tools in per se. I simply took a step back. I looked at what was in front of me and I appreciated what I saw. It is important. I appreciate you boiling that down to its simplest form, Aaron. Yes, wake up, have an executive routine for yourself, brush your teeth, take a shower, touch grass, hug a tree, whatever. Just get in tune with the world around you. Shut off lights. And yes, 100%.
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
That should be spoken about more.
Yeah, I think maybe this is the Colorado in me, but I think that there's a great healing power to nature. I think that if possible, try, natural sunlight, be outside. And if you can, I think even if you're in Boston, observing some natural setting is very grounding. It's interesting to see nature. I mean, you're talking about, hug a tree, but I mean, I do think that sometimes, it is powerful to look at an animal or a tree and to see like, wow, that tree is not really being self-conscious about, is it a good enough tree? Is it a tall enough tree? It's just sort of doing its thing. We can learn from that. We can learn from that.
So yeah. I made that joke because I, being a city kid, working in the city, just that was my life. We bought a house outside of the city, and I found a state park, and I go there. Whether I'm happy, sad, mad, whatever, I find myself there, and I just go walk, and I recognize those things. I think of that. I'm like, this is a fully self-sustaining, growing, like nothing's helping that or hurting that. It's there. Yes, 100%. So I appreciate you bringing that. That's a perspective I don't think we've had on this podcast yet, of just take a step back and just enjoy what's around you.
Yeah. And if you could do it, get a dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's another episode.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Well, Aaron, I greatly appreciate your time today. I would love at some point to bring the team out. I would love to tour your facility. If you're ever back in Boston, reach out. We'd love to take you out for a steak dinner. It's amazing work you're doing, and I'm happy we can kind of give you a platform here in Boston, so people can reach out to you for help. Boston Evening Therapy Associates. We'll be sure to put the website in the session notes today.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Aaron.
Real pleasure.
Thanks,
to meet
Aaron.
you. All right.
Absolutely. All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.